I get asked one question over and over and over again, and I don't have an answer for people. And they say, why do you not know? And I said, because I never asked. What is Starbuck?
It was a process of trying to figure that out, and I think in the end, I opted to not decide because every answer that we came up with was unsatisfying to what I thought she was. And what I thought she was something kind of indefinable. Didn't want her to be an angel, didn't want her to be a Jesus figure that had died and been resurrected, but was the part of the unknowable that had come to us and become tangible. Like here we are mortals, there's this other thing, there's this presence, there's this other unknowable energy or whatever we're going to call it that in the show was played as the one true God that the Cylons believed in, or the many gods that the colonists believed in. Starbuck had a destiny and was touched by or was created by or had some relationship to this other thing, right? And that's what we talked about in the writer's room. That we used it in sort of those vague terms, and it was in the, we like it. We don't quite know what it is exactly, but it's interesting. And it's interesting to take her on this particular journey. And it's kind of born in the moment of when we did the first Leoben story, with you and the torture, the waterboarding.
Yeah.
When we were writing that and started to get onto this thing, the Leoben, I think one of the first things he says is you're different, or you have a destiny, Starbuck.
You have a destiny or something like that, right?
And from that moment, it was like, okay, well, that's going somewhere.
Yeah.
And then we didn't want it to dominate the show. We didn't want the show to become all about that, but it was there. So it was like this thing in the background that kept, bubbling up periodically. We knew we wanted to keep playing with it, and we wanted to do something with it. And the concept of God was baked into the show from the miniseries. Number 6 says, God is love, and it takes us on a certain journey. There's moments throughout the series where things happen and you can't explain it by logical, rational means. Why, when Baltar says to the president, the Olympic carrier has to go, and her decision to do it, and that allows them to be okay. There's moments that are just not rational that are in the show that can only be ascribed to something else, to some supernatural being or beings or some presence that knows something, has a connection to us. Long story short, at the end, and I was faced with the challenge, how do you define the indefinable? And we debated it a lot. We had a lot of chat in the writer's room towards that last season. What is Starbuck? Is she Gabriel? Is she Jesus? Is she, okay, that's a little too easy. Is she an angel? Is she other analogies we pulled from other religious traditions and theologies on earth? And none of them felt right. It was like every time we gave it a name and every time we said this is what she is, I kind of felt like the mystery was gone and the special quality was gone. And I decided at the end, I'm just not going to say which is, and we're just going to leave the audience with that. And it was sort of, the Sopranos ending is somewhat similar. You just don't answer certain questions and you let the audience wonder. And that's going to be really unsatisfying to some people. And
do you think because the ambiguity of that is sort of, do you think that's unsatisfying for people?
I think for some people it is very unsatisfying.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you get the question a lot, because it's people want that answer. And I think looking back on it, I'm not entirely sure that was the right choice. Maybe I should have given it an answer, because it is this weird hanging thing from the show that does come up a lot. And I've gone back and forth in my mind over the last few years about, is that good? Do I like that? Am I enjoying the fact that people still think about it and are still wrestling with it and want to know? Or am I just like, fuck, why didn't I just answer that question? Why didn't I just give it to them so it's not just sticking around? I kind of still feel like I'm glad I did it, because I also just love the moment that you disappear.
I know.
Lee turns around and you're gone. It's one of my favorite moments in that finale.
Yeah.
And there's no goodbye, and it's just like, and then she's gone. And it is like a little bit of a, what was she? She was here and then she's gone.
Yeah. I always looked at that moment, and I loved the moment at the end where she asks him what he's going to do. And as soon as he starts talking about what he's going to do, she knows he's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that was her final thing, was just making sure that he was going to be okay.
He was okay. Yeah.
And then she's gone.
Yeah.
And what's so crazy, I love that you went back to the thing, and I didn't understand it 25. I didn't get it at all. But now that I'm older, that her biggest fear was being forgotten.
Yeah. Right.
I just like, as an older person,
older than 25,
older than 20, but it gets me now.
Right.
You know, it gets me now. And at the time I didn't have an understanding of life, you know?
Yeah.
And it just like, I get her now, maybe more than I did at the time, which I think that's what made her so great.
Yeah, because
she also didn't know herself.
And that's not a young person's thought. You're right. Will I be forgotten?
Right.
Yeah, and that it was a terrifying thing to her on some basic level, the idea that she would be forgotten, but that's not a young person's thought.
No.
And so Starbuck had this, you know, she was starting to think in those terms, in the eternal, and what she leaves behind, you know, when she goes. And it was interesting. She was a character that was edging into this other place, you know, but resisted it and was not a person of faith in that sense, and then has these experiences and keeps feeling the shadow coming and keeps feeling this draw, and then has to kind of grapple with it. It was a fascinating journey to take her on.